right, folks. Today's episode brought to you by my favorite sponsor, SunsetLakeSebede.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST. You will get 20% off. 20% off what, Sam? What would I possibly want at SunsetLakeSebede.com? I'll tell you what you would want. They got all sorts of Sebede tinctures. They've got some with melatonin. They've got it in 3 different flavors, in 3 different concentrations. Plus, they got something called Good Night Oil. It is a fantastic sleep aid. It has Sebe and Sebede. And on top of which, they also have gummies. They got gummies with melatonin. They got gummies with ashwagandha. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Focus gummies with lion's mane and cordyceps. They've got some to relax. They've got some with delta and also THC. All products that, it's in these contexts you're not supposed to mention. Anyways, the point being, it's all available for you there at SunsetLakeSebede.com. They're a great company. They got great business practices. They got great farming practices, integrated pest management. They don't use pesticides. And most important to me, the reason why I really love them, in addition to that sleep oil, is they have great, they're movement allies. They have spent thousands of dollars supporting strike funds and refugee resettlement and carceral reform and Planned Parenthood and mutual aid up in Vermont and food pantries and Give Directly. Just an all-around great company. And you can get 20% off all their products by using Left is Best. Now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, August 30th, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, and for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Jeet Heer, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation, will be with us. Also on the program today, Harris sat down for her first interview as the Democratic nominee, facing a barrage of right-wing questions from CNN host Dana Bash. When asked about Israel policy, Harris was evasive and repeated the same tired Biden administration lines. This is not sustainable. Israel has attacked yet another aid convoy, killing 5 workers with a U.S. humanitarian group, so maybe Biden will care. By the way, they're killing all the aid workers because they want no aid to get in, so people die. Just so, in case people were confused about that. ABC has capitulated to Trump and will include the muted mics in the debate. Which sucks, but I don't know how much better things will be for him regardless. Harris gains on Trump, leading by 2 percentage points with registered voters across the 7 swing states. By the way, it's 7 swing states now, because North Carolina, Biden did not have a chance there before. Polling shows majority support in Missouri for the state's abortion protection measure that's on the ballot this fall. Mortgage rates fall for the 2nd time in anticipation of the Fed's cuts next month. Trump has announced his IVF for all proposal, which no one is buying, and he pisses off abortion activists, the bad kind, by indicating he might vote for Florida's abortion ballot measure to protect it and then walking it back right after. He didn't even know what he was saying. The U.S. Army has issued a strong rebuke of the Trump campaign for violating policies that prohibit political activities on cemetery grounds at Arlington. Speaking of North Carolina, RFK can't get on the ballot there, or get off the ballot, I should say. Off the ballot there, too, which is sad. A prisoner with Parkinson's was just executed in Florida after the Supreme Court okayed it. And lastly, R.I.P. Johnny Gaudreau, a.k.a. Johnny Hockey. Did I say R.I.P.? Yes, rest in peace. Johnny Hockey, one of the NHL's current stars, killed last night by an alleged drunk driver in New Jersey along with his brother. They were there for his sister's wedding. It's a really tragic story. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. Kaz Jabbage says audio is cutting out here and there on YouTube, at least. Are you seeing any of that, Matt?
I'm not seeing people talk about that on YouTube.
Okay, no. So it might be
let us know.
Your guys' end, but yeah, that's I know this is not, of course, ESPN or the sports show, but Johnny Gaudreau was also a New Jersey guy, and to have like one of the top 20, 30 NHL, I mean, he was the star in Columbus, and by all accounts, a very nice guy. To be killed like that in the prime of his career, he was 31 years old. It's just shocking. So let's turn to the interview that Harris did with CNN yesterday. The big interview happened. The media can finally end their incessant whining that she hasn't given them content. And like we've been saying on this program, she needs to do a sit-down interview. She needs to answer some more specific questions. But that's for like the small d democratic importance of it. All they cared about was getting content. And they were just pissed that they couldn't monetize it to this degree.
Well, and also, don't go to Dana Bash and CNN would be my advice.
She framed every question from the right, every single question. And on the one time when she needed to follow up on Israel policy, Dana just moved on to the next question. And it was incredible. The number of rapid fire questions that seemingly came from the Trump campaign attack line playbook was just stunning to see, but not, I guess, unexpected. And for Harris's purposes, it's probably good that she answered these questions and took tough questions in this way as she pivots to the center in a general election. So there were some really good moments. The moment about Israel policy was pretty awful, and we'll be talking about that with Jeet in just a bit. But this part was interesting here because Dana Bash asks Kamala Harris about Donald Trump and how he mentioned that she, quote, turned black. I really, really like how Harris responded to this in the sense that she really didn't at all. This is refreshing. The Democrats have finally learned how to run against Trump. Here we go.
Republican. I want to ask you about your opponent, Donald Trump.
Okay.
I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any?
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Let's talk about some foreign policy.
Then we get to the Israel stuff, but that was really it. That she just didn't respond. Let's not engage on this front. I'm going to make my case. He's not going to drag me into the muck.
She's running scared, see?
And she hasn't emphasized the historic nature of her candidacy at all. Dana Bash did point that out to her at some point, and she was quick to continue to de-emphasize it because She's trying to make this about what she would do for the public as opposed to like some kind of self-aggrandizing personal display. And, you know, that's just good strategy, right? Like when Hillary Clinton made it all about herself, "I'm with her" was her slogan. That's not
Ready for Hillary. Like, who should care?
right. She
It's
cares.
crazy.
She cares because she's
And the
built
party
up,
cared, but the
right.
American people need to.
And they bought into the mythology of this person. I mean, there are many criticisms, I think, of the Democratic Party over these past few decades that Harris is breaking with a bit. But like the lauding of these politicians as if, you know, they're gods to a degree, and building them up oftentimes at the expense of like actually governing and gaining power, anointing people like Hillary Clinton, or, you know, having octogenarian politicians cling on to power like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example, instead of her replacement, because she was basically this kind of Democratic Party deity. That's just bad politics, and I'm happy to see a break from that to a degree. Another interesting part of this interview, if we could just go back to that, Matt, I did this out of order, actually. But before that question, Dana Bash asked her broadly about basically, you know, some of her changes in policy, because she walked back things like her support for the Green New Deal and the fracking ban element, which Dana Bash followed up like 4 or 5 times on, not much on Israel.
Cough, Pennsylvania, cough, cough.
Exactly. It's the most obvious kind of way
Wedge.
to right, exactly. It's politics. She's ruling out a fracking ban because she wants to win Pennsylvania. That's basically it. But you know, in the Democratic primary in 2019, or in 2020 in that race, but in 2019, she took a lot of positions, as did so many of those Democrats in that incredibly crowded field, that were, you know, ranging from disingenuous to cynical to like trying to balance getting the Bernie wing of the party and also general election and swing state voters. So it puts her in this bind, right? And it's less to do with her flip-flopping, which Trump does 5 times a day. We don't know where he stands on anything at any given moment, because he's just trying to win the conversation and then move on to the next one. It has more to do with the fact that that primary, I think, forced a lot of Democrats to take positions to
cut off Bernie.
To cut off Bernie, right? That maybe and also, you know, to just get a piece in the middle to try to split that baby to win that primary, and it's not necessarily indicative, I think, of her as a politician more broadly, but she answered in terms of the policy positions, but it does show that she's a cipher to a degree. This is how she answered the questions about flip-flopping.
Look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy. Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America, and by extension the globe, around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed. So that is the reality of it. In 4 years of being vice president, I'll tell you, one of the aspects to your point is traveling the country extensively. I mean, I'm here in Georgia. I think somebody told me 17 times since I've been vice president in Georgia alone. I believe it is important to build consensus. And it is important to find a common place of understanding of where we can actually solve problems.
On that note, you had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone
Yes,
in
I
mind?
would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
Okay. So on the substance, what can we say here, right? This is not stuff we're going to agree with. This is.
I think it's right that this is more true to her like long-term values than was the 2020 primary. I think she's sincere about I am tough on the border. What are you talking about? I was California Attorney General.
I think that's a fair way to phrase it, right? I mean, this happened after Dana Bash repeatedly pressed her on the issue of fracking and the issue of the border. So that's how they're trying to frame this, right? They're trying to frame it within the branding of her as a prosecutor, that she's tough on the transnational criminal organizations, human traffickers. She kept repeating that over and over again. The Republican part amused me because this was asked of Biden. It was also asked of Obama. It was also asked of Hillary Clinton. This happens every general election.
Obama,
and they always say yes, and then they usually pick someone strategically and that in a basically ceremonial way, or to give Democrats an advantage by like, say, the rumor is, it's more, this is definitely fan fiction.
Or they just keep on the FBI director as a Republican.
Or that, but something to that effect, right? The fan fiction is that she selects Susan Collins for something, and then a Democrat gets to appoint a Democrat in that Senate seat. But
which is fine because
that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I know. Also, Becca Lewis points out, who is a researcher, PhD candidate. She's done a lot of writing on the right wing. Diversity of opinion line is specifically a right wing strategy developed in the 1970s to move mainstream institutions to their right, and a half century later, it continues to work. Just to put that in the proper context.
Right, exactly. So. It is funny. Labor Lover 420 says, notable that she said she would, but at least she doesn't have anyone in mind. Might be me wish casting, but it sounds like she's kind of bullshitting. I think Matt's right that the prosecutorial element is actually true to who she is. I do think she was BSing there, though, because she's like, no one in mind.
It's like how you say, like, yeah, I'd maybe date a conservative.
Right.
Because you don't want to seem rude.
Yes, that's what it felt like. It felt insincere.
I mean, the Obama era, that Doris Kearns Goodman Team of Rivals book came out, and everyone was just like, oh, you have to have like half your team be like the other party.
Right,
or to have a good, that's how, you save the union, apparently.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Jeet Heer, and he is going to break down the rest of this interview, and we'll talk a little bit about Trump as well. Be right back.
Hey, folks, 365 days in a year. Did you know that? Well, it means where there's 365 days when you might need to buy someone a birthday present. Finding the perfect gift for everyone and anyone, that can take weeks, months, sometimes years. But I have an idea for you to simplify the process. Aura Digital Picture Frame. It is ranked the #1 digital picture frame by Wirecutter. Aura frames are easy to set up. They are easy to update and enjoy. Plus, Aura frames can be preloaded. This is what's amazing about them to me. You can preload them with photos and gift messages, whether you ship it to directly to the people you give them the gift for, or you never have to take it out of the box. So it doesn't matter whether you give them the frame to your best friend, whether you're giving it to your cousin, your uncle, your folks, your grandparents, Anybody want to cheer somebody up, send them pictures of puppies, you can be sure that your gift is personalized just for them. Aura was a revelation, particularly with some of the people I gave it to are not very good with technology, because all they got to do is take it out of the box and plug it in. Bingo, bango. It's all set up. If you ask them their Wi-Fi, you can also do that too. You can set that up for them and it'll just automatically hook up. Every Aura frame comes with unlimited storage. So you can preload the frame with as many photos as you want. All you need is the free Aura WAP app and Wi-Fi connection. Right now, Aura is having their very first friends and family sale. We got an exclusive offer just for you guys. Limited time only, $35 off their best-selling frame. Visiting auraframes.com using the promo code majority at checkout. That's AURA frames.com. Promo code majority. This is the best offer of the season, so don't miss out. Terms and conditions apply. Now back to Emma.
We are back, and we are joined by our good friend of the show, Jeet Heer, national affairs correspondent for The Nation, host of the weekly Nation podcast, The Time of Monsters. Jeet, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, great to be on.
So, you watched the Harris interview, I'm assuming. We started with that clip of her just basically dismissing Trump, trying to goad her into talking about race and her gender, about how she just turned black.
It's a chameleon.
And yeah, exactly. And that was a good moment.
Yeah, I actually think that's like the best moment because it really captures the tenure of the campaign, which is like not to get into the mud with Trump on this stuff, to be dismissive, and also, I mean, I thought the phrase she used was it like the same old, right? Like
same old playbook, yeah.
Same old playbook, which actually is actually like deeper than it first seems, because I actually think a big problem for Trump is he's been around too long. He's been a national figure now. For almost 10 years in national politics. He's this is his third running for the president, right? And like you have to go back to William Jennings Bryan or Franklin Roosevelt, who actually won the popular vote. So people are like, I think, tired of Trump and tired of. I mean, I think there's some Democrats who say like, well, they point out some outrageous, obscene, vile, misogynist thing that Trump posts on True Social and says, why isn't the media talking about this? Well, I think the people who know that Trump is a misogynist already know that, have known that for a long time, and you don't need to like underscore this stuff.
And also, it's what they like. In fact, I mean, she's not playing into those hands there because, first of all, like, people like his cruelty and his callousness. I mean, that's what his base likes in particular. So when you point it out, you're just reinforcing what they like. And then to make it about the same old playbook, you're saying, okay, I'm the change candidate, even though I'm the sitting vice president for a guy that is deeply unpopular, which is a really difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I mean, I think that's a big part of the appeal. I mean, she actually has put herself forward as the I'm something new. You thought you were going to just get Trump versus Biden, and like now this is a chance to turn the page on that whole chapter of history, which I think most people find just an extremely distasteful period. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was a very sharp response and worth kind of pointing out. And also, I mean, the other thing is, if you respond in any detail to like Trump's idiocy on this, you're like engaging the battle on the front that he wants to fight it at. He wants this to be about, like how black is Kamala Harris. So like you don't want to fight him on that ground. You want to fight the battle on the grounds that you're winning at. So I mean, I thought it's a good indication that I think she's the first Democrat to really pull that off, to try to make this into a post-Trump argument.
Right, and presenting herself as a way to move on from that period of politics, of Trumpism, to that degree. And again, so much of his appeal to his base is about triggering the libs. So what do? Don't get triggered.
Don't get triggered. Yeah,
Don't get triggered.
Exactly, and I have to say, like that base itself, like my sense is that, like, it's not growing. Like there, I mean, in some ways, he's like a nostalgia act now. Like if you look at his rallies, like he often has the same people. He foregrounds them, the Blacks for Trump people and others, but it is like a Grateful Dead concert, like in 2015 or something, or whenever the last time the Grateful Dead played. Like it is like an act that has an appeal to a certain audience, but it's not like racking up the charts in the way it used to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's turn to her answer on the economy here. This was her strongest section, in addition to what we talked about with the dismissing of Trump, because she's defending Biden's economic record better than Biden ever did. Ever.
Yeah.
People who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize that.
Is that the right?
A time code issue.
We just have a bit of an issue. Sorry, guys. It's part one, Matt. Sorry. CNN cut this up on YouTube in 3 different sections. So
Okay.
apologies about that.
Yeah. I figured that wasn't the clip that you wanted to have, but we can return to that clip in
We can
later.
get to that later. Yeah. So this was the part where she's asked about the economy.
One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it, which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging, what we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years, what we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited. I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that any
You
longer.
maintain Bidenomics is a success.
Oh
I
my God.
maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America. What we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity.
Okay, so wanted that full explanation there. She did a good job in responding to some of those questions. Now, the housing piece, I wish we weren't making home ownership so central to the economy. But like, I have to be, and I wish she was emphasizing more like the building of housing and bringing down rental prices by attacking corporate landlords. These are things she's proposed, but this is about the general election pivot where they feel like they are going for the middle class family, right? Driving up those numbers. Go ahead.
Yeah, on the housing, I mean, she isn't actually even going as far as Biden himself did, where, like in that last desperate bid to save his presidency, he was like coming out in favor of rent control. So, yeah, I mean, it is a more kind of mainstream appeal than is possible. I mean, like Biden himself has shown, you can call for national rent control and be a Democrat. But having said that, no, I do think it's a good message on the economy. It's partially just because it's sort of coherently delivered. Like with Biden making the same points, like it did not just stick in the public. There's a few issues where Biden had actually retreated from. There's a period about a year ago where Biden started to talk about price gouging, partially because he's prodded to by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And that was polling very well. But then they retreated from that because they got complaints from the donor class. So it's actually good to see her. That I think that's actually more broadly true of her messaging, that it is like much less conflict averse than Biden. Biden was a very conflict averse candidate. He wanted to not offend anyone as much as possible. And so here I think we're seeing a couple of cases where she's actually willing to take people on.
Oh my God, yes, you're totally right about that. And Axios reported the other day that she brought back this like DNC lawyer who had been central to Elias to combating Republicans on election law. Biden quietly had parted ways with him last year because he was being too aggressive in combating Republicans, and they thought that would scare away moderates to some degree. I mean, the level, that's the point, is that I'm energized by the willingness to engage in making your ideas to the American public as opposed to doing the nonsense triangulation that the Biden campaign ideologically and his team was obsessed with. And like, even with abortion, the reports were that his top advisor, Mike Donnellan, was telling him that the reason the Democrats did well in 2022 in the midterms and that there was not a red wave was because of his moderate position on abortion, because of his personal Catholicism and things like that. And I mean, the Democrats did well on that issue in spite of you, dude, not because of anything you did.
Yeah, no. I will remind viewers and listeners, I think they're aware of this, but it's worth underscoring. Joe Biden was not on the ballot in 2022 and hasn't been on the ballot in all these special elections where the Democrats are overperforming. And it was actually a real grassroots effort to like sort of foreground abortion, sometimes in the defiance of party leadership, that has actually made this the winning issue that it's turned out to be. So absolutely. I mean, I think when they do a mini series about all this, the greatest moment will be when Nancy Pelosi's talking to Biden and says, put Donnellan on the phone. Meaning that, I want to actually take issue with the numbers that Donnellan's giving you because they're fraudulent. And I think that on the abortion front and the sort of shift in messaging, I think the shift in messaging from the Biden democracy message to the Harris freedom message, I don't think people recognize enough that a lot of that is driven by reproductive freedom. That's a way of making reproductive freedom more valuable, and also a way of making the whole issue of democracy less abstract. It's not like when people think of democracy, think of, well, I vote every 2 years, or I vote more likely every 4 years. There's these guys in Washington that say a lot of things that I don't really understand. But freedom is actually something very central to the lived experience of Americans in politics. It's the freedom to be able to
Yes.
get an abortion when you need it, or more broadly, the freedom not to have to pay thousands of dollars for medicine that you actually need to stay alive. So there's been a more general shift from sort of very abstract arguments to very concrete arguments.
From solemn patriotic duty to this is what we're going to do for you. That's, I mean, the joy piece, right? You can be cynical about it, of course, and we're about to play her pretty awful answer on Israel policy, but it's about almost positive rights versus this defensive posture that was embodied both in the messaging from the Biden campaign and in the strategy too. But I will also say, media critique, it's sometimes tired, but those questions from Dana Bash, it's insane. It's insane. So you embrace Bidenomics. They keep saying how she's not detailed enough on her economic policies, right? And the Times and the Washington Post, they're putting out these pieces about that. But she is being detailed. She was explicit in that, especially when you compare it to Donald Trump, who's saying nothing. They just don't like the answer about price gouging, so they're trying to hit her and say that she's not detailed enough, when that's not even the correct critique about this, if you want to make a critique.
Yeah, no. Although, I mean, not to defend Dana Bash, but I do Bash, yeah. But I do think that the point about Bidenomics, the one reason why it kind of works as a hit was that there was a point people forget all this, but about a year or two ago, the Biden White House, their whole thinking was at that point, well, we just have to embrace Bidenomics and say Bidenomics is working and the economy is great and things are wonderful. And so at that, I mean, I think that lingering memory of that moment, which was a terrible argument, and it's very different from the argument that Harris is making, where her whole argument is we've done good things, but there's a lot more work to do, and here's what I'm going to do for you, which is a future-oriented message, and which is a message of actually promising things for people, rather than you should be grateful. I'm the great defender of democracy, and I've already given you a wonderful economy.
Right. And now let's turn to Israel. She's asked by Dana Bash here about what her position is on Israel, and she essentially repeats exactly what she said at the convention and exactly the Biden administration line.
In chief, President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza.
Nope.
He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. Mm-hmm. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
but no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8th to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I think people are running with the no a little bit. It's more, to me, a dismissal than it is an outright declaration of policy. She's trying to not declare anything, right? She's trying to just get through it, get to the other side. It wouldn't be smart for her to just unilaterally declare policy, even if she agrees with Biden. Let's just stipulate that, right? It wouldn't be smart for her to be like, yeah, I'm concretely doing exactly what he's doing, because she's not in the position to do that yet, right? But still, this is so insufficient, and I don't think that she can get through this election with that by just trotting that line out like that. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I mean, like, in some ways, she's had the same conundrum as Herbert Humphrey running in '68, where he's like a vice president. The president's not running, but the president is still the president and is still carrying out an unpopular policy. In Lyndon Johnson's case, a very unpopular policy of the Vietnam War, and it's very hard for a vice president to be critical. But actually, like in '68, towards the end of the election, Humphrey starts to distinguish himself more from Lyndon Johnson, and that was the point where he started to improve in the polls. Ultimately, not enough to win, but I mean, like, it is a sort of significant thing that, like, at a certain point, people are interested in like a new messaging, and like it doesn't have to be like super specific. Like, like one could say, like as Eisenhower did in like '52, like I will go to Korea. So, like I think if she said, like we have to get a deal. If it's not done now, like I'm gonna go to do the negotiations myself in person. Just something to indicate that there's going to be something different. I mean, I think politically that would be the much smarter move than what they're doing now. And
Elizabeth Warren gave her this suggestion. She went on television and she said, "You just have to say I'm going to follow the law." The thing that Harris doesn't want to do is also to implicate Joe Biden in not following the Leahy law, which he's not.
Being a war criminal.
But right, but that's that's what she should do, right? But they need to throw the old man overboard at some point.
They have to, and I mean it's just such a delicate situation because I think it was very hard to get Biden to not do it, and one sees like there's a lot of evidence that Biden is trying to entrench his own policy. Like I think people underestimate the degree to which Biden, or at least Biden's handlers, which might be more plausible, the sort of national security team he has around, they are like ideological true believers in this approach. They think that this is the way to go. And there's been some good reporting in the Huffington Post about some recent appointments that Biden has made to like national security posts, which is like, people who think along the same lines as like Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken. And I think the idea is to sandbag Harris to make sure that it'd be very hard for her to maneuver and to change policy. I think we have to understand that dynamic as well. Like we think like Biden's out of the way. He's no longer there, but he's actually president, and more importantly, his foreign policy team is still the team. I don't know. I mean, another possible way is some of her surrogates, some of the people who are her foreign policy advisors could be, putting out statements or putting out feelers. It's a very hard position to be in, but it's frankly a crappy thing. I mean, like it's part of Joe Biden's crappiness, but also the broader crappiness of the political party that they are like unwilling to do this. And I'll emphasize, like this is a very close election. Like they were going to lose under Biden. Now they have a chance to win under Harris, but it's by no means a sure thing. We shouldn't be taken away by the politics of joy and all this like feel good that we have. Like, if you actually look at the polls, like she's like has a small lead in the swing states now, but it's a small lead. Trump often polls above the his polling numbers. It would only take a very small polling error for Trump to win. And in that situation, like to alienate like a significant chunk of your own voters on this issue, seems like I don't know. It's hard to describe the sort of madness.
The continued efforts to not be specific about any change is it's not tenable. And if there are a lot of people in the IM saying, no, this is her position. This is exactly what her position is. We've laid out this on the show, my view on this, and I can repeat it right now. People can disagree with me if they'd like. But no Democrat is going to be sufficient on this topic. We can hope for somebody who can be pushed. My view is that she's more pushable than Biden, and that the people she surrounds herself with, like Phil Gordon, her national security advisor, has better policy as it relates to the Middle East that's more focused on de-escalation and less ideological Zionism. Jeet, I'm wondering if that's your view as well on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the key here is that Biden's team is very focused on Iran and the idea that you have to absolutely build this alliance system, the Abraham Accords, between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And there's reporting that Biden still thinks that. He thinks that he can still do this.
That was a Trump policy that Biden's continuing.
Yeah. It's a bipartisan policy. And as long as that's the policy, then there's every incentive to give Israel a kind of free reign. But I mean, I think that, like, for me, the hope in terms of like sort of realpolitik, the people who man American foreign policy are never going to think the way you and I do. But I mean, there is a kind of realpolitik case for disengagement, for de-escalation. And there's two strands of this. One is that the Iranian government itself has given a lot of indication that they're open to this. One is that they've actually shown a huge amount of restraint in responding to Israeli provocation and Israeli attempts to escalate this war. And the second is Iranian voters themselves, like in a surprise that took everyone, no one was expecting, elected someone who's supports negotiating with the United States and starting up again a nuclear deal. Given that reality, and given the fact that Harris has people around her who are also open to negotiations, like Phil Gordon, there's a real possibility that the fundamental structure could change, and that would give her a huge once you stop making Iran the boogeyman and think of this as a regional player you have to make a deal with, that gives you a huge amount more room to actually hold Israel, and I have to say Saudi Arabia, accountable.
And apparently Iran, is looking to, I mean, they're displaying this with their restraint with Israel. They want to re-engage with the West. They want to have a better relationship with the United States and the players in the West as well, for their own aims, right?
I think their economy has been suffering. And I have to say, this is not just the Iranian leadership. I mean, who knows what they think, but the Iranian people themselves in the most recent election have made it very clear that they themselves do not favor escalation and, are open to restarting talks with the United States. And so there's actually a great opportunity. And I would actually say, if Harris were not bound by Biden, if he were not this anchor that's dragging her down, the real start case you could make, and I think it would be a very successful case, is that if you get Trump, he's the guy that went around assassinating Iranian generals and pulled out of the Iran nuclear talk and is all in favor of these policies that will escalate a larger war in the Middle East. And I'm open to talking. That would actually be a pretty compelling difference between the arguments and would win over a lot of people that are skeptical of her. Would basically say it would be a choice between someone who will repeat all the mistakes the United States has made in the Middle East in the past, or someone who wants, like Barack Obama, to pursue a new path. like I think that she could actually make that case politically if she were not like if Joe Biden did not actually have a veto power over what she can say on foreign policy.
Basically. Yeah, I mean, like, I think just case in point, somebody like Obama would have been better in this situation, and would have not been so okay with getting publicly humiliated by Benjamin Netanyahu on the national stage, or international stage every single day.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, like people haven't fully processed how bad Biden is. I actually think that a fair number of Republican presidents, like Reagan and Bush Sr.,
George H.W. Bush would have been better.
Yeah, would not have allowed this war to have gone on this long. Would have actually like put the priorities of the United States above this. But it has to be said, I mean, like Biden, it's partially the ideological Zionism, but it's also partially this hold of this idea of an Abraham Accords has on him. I mean, for Biden, foreign policy is basically about building alliance systems. It's like collecting cards for him for like young kids, right? Like, you know, like I built up NATO. I have more members in NATO. There's this like alliance system in the Pacific. I can never pronounce it. ACAS, ASAS, whatever the hell. Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. And he keeps boasting about
AUKUS,
that.
yeah.
AUKUS, yeah. I'm the guy that built up AUKUS. Like as if one voter in a million knows what the hell AUKUS is. And Biden thinks the same way about the Middle East. Like I'll be the guy that gets the Abraham Accords done. You know, I mean, but like, is foreign policy just about building these like alliance systems that allow you to sell more weapon systems, or is that about negotiating with other countries
with diplomacy? And you know, there's no question that a guy like that, Phil Gordon, with his record, it's distinct from that. It's more about de-escalation versus that. I mean, we're getting a lot of angry IMs, including I'm called a ditzy moron here. Thank you for your membership. I mean, look, that's just my honest view of the situation, and Jeet, I think you're on point about it.
Yeah. And I would say like there limits to how far Harris will go. Like I'm not like super confident that the United States will ever like, you know, robustly support Palestinian human rights. And in fact, I think that the best hope for the Palestinians is a kind of American withdrawal from the Middle East and to bring in other parties, other nations that can negotiate it. I mean, one of the striking things with the Biden era is that China has done more for diplomacy in the Middle East than the United States has. China was the one that negotiated a de-escalation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. China was the one that negotiated the end of the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. So I think there's a way in which, like, if the United States is like committed to like endless hostility, that's just going to create a path for other powers to move in and do actually the work that people want to see done, which is negotiation.
If your position is just in the interest of furthering American power, like from a realpolitik perspective, as you say, Jeet, you can make that case. Let's turn to the Republicans here, because Trump got himself into a little bit of a pickle with the anti-abortion activists on his side the other day. He was asked here by NBC's Dasha Burns about Florida's 6-week abortion ban. And it seems like, honestly, he gets confused here. He thinks he's being asked about his position nationally for his platform, but there was backlash because it sounded like he's saying that he would vote in favor of the abortion protection measure in Florida, where he's supposedly voting. So here's what his answer was.
You overturned,
everyone does.
I think Roe, does, and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I'm voting that I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
Oh, very, very.
Interesting. Yeah. It's a great use of the word interesting because it's actually a subject he's not interested in at all.
Oh, yeah,
It's
right.
like a headache for him. But yeah, no, I mean, clearly he's like out of his depth. He will say whatever he thinks will get him votes. And that is actually like, you are seeing a lot of the anti-choice people being very angry about him on that. And I don't think one can should underestimate that. I mean, I think people sometimes think of these evangelical voters as just these kind of like mindless drones that will always vote for the GOP. But I think there have been points in history where they have actually punished the party for not going far enough. And that's actually one reason why they're actually very disciplined voters, and they have their eyes on the prize. That's one reason why it's such a hard issue for the Republicans. And these are actually voters who are willing to stay home and crash everything in order to keep control of the party.
I 100% agree, Jeet. I know a lot of voters who are Republican voters who voted for Trump in 2016, not because they liked Trump, they were disgusted by him, but that Supreme Court and abortion issue drove them out.
Yeah.
And I think he lost in part by 2020 because he already had the Supreme Court stacked. That urgency was gone.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, there's like so many ways in which he's unappealing. And also, I mean, I thought it related to this is his sort of thing on the IVF, where like, he's suddenly saying like, I want to fund IVF, which is like, great, yeah, let's fund all like surgery.
Oh, IVF for all. It's just, even if you don't want it, you can get it.
I honestly think like if the Democrats were a little bit more nimble, they would say like, wow, that's a great idea. Let's drop the bill and can you like make the Republican senators in the House like vote on this? Like almost like great Trojan horse for Medicare for all. But I mean, it just shows that he like looks at the polls. IVF is hugely popular. It's only like the really fanatical, hardcore anti-choice people that are against it. But he needs those voters, and he just like
he needs to activate them, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he needs to,
like Harris needs the base, right? And why this continued dance on Gaza policy is not tenable. Trump needs the base more than she does, honestly, at this point, given his relative position in the polls. So, like, J.D. Vance went on TV this morning. He responded to this, right? Because Trump's confused. He thinks that she's asking. He doesn't even know what's on. He doesn't even seem to know that there's abortion on the ballot in Florida, which is part of why, like, Harris had been pouring campaign resources into Florida. It's a long shot. But that issue is driving people out, right? It's key. It's on the ballot in Nevada. It's on the ballot in Arizona. This is really important for the election and to drive out voters who are more likely to vote for Democrats. So he got confused. J.D. Vance goes on TV this morning on CNN with John Berman, is asked about these comments, and this is what he said.
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
So the campaign then put out a statement that said Trump has not yet said how he will vote on the ballot initiative in Florida. With me now is former President Trump's running mate, Republican Vice Presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Senator, great to have you with us. You can help us clear this up. How can you vote for more than 6 weeks without voting for the amendment?
Well, I think all the president is saying, and of course he's going to make his own announcement on how he's going to vote on the Florida bill, is that he thinks that there should be more than 6 weeks. And he's been very consistent in that. He says he doesn't like just 6 weeks. He obviously doesn't like late-term abortion. I think like a lot of Americans, the president is sort of somewhere else on this issue. And he's also said that he wants abortion policy to be made by the states themselves individually and not by the national government. I think that's the most important thing here, is that he's, of course, opining on this as a Florida resident. But when it comes to national policy, John, President Trump has been extremely consistent that he wants abortion policy to be made by the states. Florida, California, Ohio, they're going to have different approaches. That's okay. What he wants is to focus on eliminating inflation, bringing down the cost of groceries and housing, and closing down that southern border that Kamala Harris opened up. That's where he's focused, and that's where we'll continue to focus for the remainder of the campaign.
He said he was going to vote for more than 6 weeks. So what's your understanding of how he will do that?
Well, I think what he's saying is that he doesn't like doing it at just 6 weeks. Obviously, he's going to make his own judgment on how he ultimately votes on the amendment. I think he's probably making an argument about how he feels about the issue.
Probably.
He's not making some proclamation about how he's going to vote on the amendment. And of course, they clarified afterwards that he wasn't making an explicit determination of how he's going to vote or announcing anything. Look, the president, I'm sure, will tell the American people how he's going to vote on it eventually, but he wasn't making an announcement last night.
So it was a grammar thing.
Sorry, could you repeat that, John?
It was a grammar thing. It was a speech thing. It was somehow some confusion in the words that he chose. Senator Vance, can you hear me? Senator Vance, I may be super staticky. You may not be hearing the loud baritone of my voice here. Senator, can you hear me?
Dude. Oh, throwing in a
Senator
little
Vance.
compliment for himself at the end.
Sorry, could you?
Yeah, okay, that just goes on. So he's pretending, right? He's pretending. That didn't cut out. I can't hear.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a classic trick. Well, which actually, I remember Trump doing in 2016 when he's asked about like David Duke. By Will Smith, he was asked about well, David Duke has endorsed you, and Trump was like,
I'm going through a tunnel. I might lose you. I'm in the elevator.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that whole interview with Vance, I would really encourage people to watch it. It will show you why I think Vance is the worst vice presidential pick in American history since Aaron Burr, who, to be fair, shot someone. We
don't know about J.D. Vance's background. We just don't know. I mean, why did the guy change his name 3 times? Could he be running from the law? We just don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, again, it does shows you, the totally untenable thing, and they're doing cleanup for Trump, who doesn't know what's going on, and frankly, I mean, I think this is a fair point that Democrats are making, which is that you listen to Trump and he's out of it. He's not, I think people really underestimated Trump in 2015, 2016, where we can see all the loathsome things we want about him, which are true. But he had a genuine charisma and was actually actively engaged. Trump is a little bit out of it. I don't think he's quite the figure that he was. And so Vance, so in that situation, you want a vice presidential running mate who can do cleanup, and Vance is not the man. He does not have that nimbleness. This is a man who does not know how to order a donut. So.
Yeah, right. And it's also just Trump, think for 1 second, dude. Why would you be voting on anything? You're not running for Congress. You are running for president. You are running to sign bills into law. So he doesn't know what he's saying. He thinks it's about his national position, and he gets himself into a pickle here, because also when you get into, this is where the Republicans are in a bind. When you get into the week by week and the exceptions, right? It's so you're parsing this stuff, and the Democrats are making it about a general right, a right of freedom to do what you want. And the Republicans are having these conversations about when they can cut off the procedure, when the point is that over 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester. There's 9% that happen in the following weeks, right? But the 1%, that sliver, is when the life of the mother is in danger and the fetus is non-viable, right? Mm-hmm. Or in some of those instances. So when you place restrictions, it's not actionable. And so people are beginning to understand that, because they see these ads and they see a woman bleeding out, or a girl who's been sexually assaulted who has to give birth to that baby. They're losing on the optics, and they're losing on the emotion of the issue.
Yeah, no. I mean, the Democrats have a very clear-cut, stance that they could take, which is we'll codify Roe. I mean, I actually think they should codify Roe plus. There's ways in which you can have a stronger reproductive message than Roe had. But on the Republican side, I mean, what we heard from Vance is, well, leave it to the states. Like Texas will be executing mothers, and in New York, it's every girl gets an abortion for her once they turn 13.
Right.
We'll mandate that. Which is not like a very coherent position, especially since since 1865 at least, the issue of this is actually one country has been settled. And then once you say it's states' rights, you get into all this stuff of, well, what if someone, crosses from Texas to a neighboring state? People.
It plays
get a
into the
little bit-
Democrats' hands when you when you get into those kind of details. It's almost
because
like
what it means. What that means, the states' rights thing means, is that the most reactionary state in America. The Democrats can make an issue of that. They can say, we want a national law, and they're having their states' rights exemption means Oklahoma is executing abortion doctors. I think that's not a very good place for the Republicans to be.
Totally agree. Jeet Heer, you can find him over at The Nation, host of the weekly Nation podcast, The Time of Monsters. Thanks so much for coming on today, wrapping up the week with us.
Always a pleasure, and especially since our bearded friend has thankfully been away. We missed the opportunity to do a little bit of gossip about him. But
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you went too far by calling him our friend. I mean, let's be real. No.
Okay.
Appreciate it, Jeet. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. All right. With that, folks, we're going to wrap up the first part of this program, head into the fun half where we'll take your calls and we'll read your very spicy IMs today. Look, it's an extremely charged time. It's an extreme, and we're witnessing a genocide in front of our eyes. It is agonizing, and it's insufficient what we're seeing right now, to put it mildly. It's genocidal. And
The truth is
it's awful.
Yeah, I mean, election day is not going to move it one way or the other for Palestinians. For unions, for abortion rights, it will. For Palestinians, and it's something that we were talking about before the show. If I'm the first woman president of America, I don't want to be also the person who sees the West Bank become Judea and Samaria under my watch. But exactly. I think the difficulty that you see is the media is, even if Kamala Harris had the feelings we do, which I don't think she does. You would have a complete full court press. I mean, you saw what happened to even Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, and it's a huge problem because I do think I can't remember who said it, but I fully expect to see the BBC and the New York Times update their style guide to, instead of saying what they should, which is as we say on this program, and you said yesterday, the illegally occupied West Bank, they're going to just call it Judea and Samaria and go along with that project. So it's very depressing, and particularly for those of us who can't, and which is most people that listen to this program, look away from what is being done with our bombs.
Exactly. All right, guys. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Griscom and I are going to talk a little bit about Con Allred and maybe some other stuff to Sunday for patrons, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. That's going to be a members only show. So support David and I.
And on ESPN, we did a fantasy football episode. So if you haven't done your draft, you can check that out. I gave some pointers, some tips.
Emma, fresh off of drafting
I did.
Patrick Mahomes.
I did draft. I'm in a league actually with David Griscom. Thank you for adding me, David. And it's a quarterback super flex league. So I took Patrick Mahomes 4th overall. I've never drafted in this format, and I really like it because it's more accurate in terms of it reflects the quarterback position. In fantasy, you really don't take a quarterback until the 3rd round.
Which always was weird to me, learning, I don't.
It doesn't make sense.
Tom Brady's just sitting there. Why wouldn't I just grab that guy?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of issues with enjoy this, guys. It overvalues rushing quarterbacks, right? So Jalen Hurts, so that's another thing that's wrong in terms. It doesn't directly correlate with the value of, like, Tom Brady was not a good fantasy quarterback because he doesn't run.
Right.
But Lamar
Unless you weight
Jackson's a
passing touchdowns
generational
more.
fantasy quarterback.
Right.
But what I like about the Superflex is that you take quarterbacks early because it actually more accurately reflects the quarterback's value in real football. So anyway, we'll see how I do in that league. It'll be fun to compete against Griscom and I guess Adam Johnson, and there's some UAW people in it, and yeah. Anyway, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, whoa. Look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and
That's what we call it in the biz.
tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
Wow.
sushi. I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
Had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
Poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
real thing.
That's poker with the boys. That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
Poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour. Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, buddy.
Tour. Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour.
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the majority report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks doing great.
Now, shut up. I don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's
No.
one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best.
Violet tour.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't binge. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she
finance.
wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question. I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back, folks. The call, Sam's call computer's just not working. Like, we just tried our best. It's just Matt and I today.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, guys. We may actually end a little early.
It's like the ice cream machine at McDonald's.
This is getting to me a little. Like, I mean, I appreciate everybody's passion, but you know, it's a tough time. But like, we've got to start, you know, talking to each other a little more kindly. Some of these IMs aren't very nice, to be honest with you guys. So like, we're all working towards the same goal. It's extremely, extremely frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. But, let's all remember that we're all on the same side here. We want to see the genocide end. It's just we may have differences in terms of like what tactics work here. And that's really it. So,
I mean, nobody knows a tactic that works.
Right.
I see people attack like the uncommitted attempt at the DNC, and it's like, well, what have you done?
Right.
Like, I am here to defend a wide array of tactics.
Exactly.
Frankly.
Whatever works. Read some IMs here. Oh, this is an interesting one. Fetterman's Blood Clot says, Matt, can you please explain that if you believe that the two-state solution is a dead letter, then why is Israeli annexation of the West Bank a bad thing? It takes the fig leaf off the two-state nonsense and heightens the contradictions.
Because of all the people that are getting killed in the meantime?
Yeah.
Because it's a fucking ethnic cleansing?
Right.
I don't know. Like, this is why people call it a one-state reality. Ilan Pape, like 10 years ago, taking issue with John Kerry, saying like, yeah, it already is. John Kerry was saying you can either have a Jewish state or you can have a democracy. You can't have both. But one state under apartheid, whatever. And then Papa's like, yeah, it already is that. And so, like, under what do we understand this one state to be? Is it Israel or is it Palestine, frankly?
Exactly.
And if it's Israel, it means that more people are going to be removed from it. Like, the heightened contradictions, like, I mean, good luck with that stuff. Like, I just don't know. I don't know, frankly, like what lineage that comes from. Like, I guess vaguely, like the New Left in the 60s, but we saw what happened with that.
Right.
Like, first...
DSA Aaron in Atlanta says it's already one state under apartheid. Like,
yeah, we know.
Yeah, we know. I think we know. It's just about the Democrats also needing to shift their messaging. I mean,
it's not about contradictions being a heightening. It's about populations being controlled and suppressed and expelled.
That's a little bit accelerationist and doesn't like the annexation wouldn't just be a bloodless annexation. It would involve immense slaughter if that were to happen.
It's turning the West Bank into what we're seeing in Gaza.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the only break on that right now is if Israel, the IDF, can like recruit and get enough Orthodox in there to replenish the secular freaks who love just killing Muslims.
Jeff from South Jersey says, did you hear you can take a class at Yale this fall to learn from expert Chris Christie on how to run a campaign? No, that's pathetic. Yale is not sending their best. All right, these are nice, whatever. People are being very sweet. Thank you guys. Space London saying it's easy to be mean when your face isn't on camera. You guys are doing great. No one has all the answers and there's a lot of pain here. Totally agree. Hopeful One says, I'm so sorry, Emma. I have said before my son-in-law is Palestinian and our family's in the West Bank. Even if this is not, would be appalling. Even if not, this would be appalling because of my love of our family. This is excruciating. You're a trusted ally. Thank you very much. I wasn't fishing, but I really do appreciate the kind comments here. Scary Mountain Wizard says, fantasy football is Dungeons and Dragons for jocks. That's not wrong. It's not wrong, but I do like
a fun pastime.
But I also like fantasy, so.
Do you like Dungeons and Dragons? Too?
Not Dungeons and Dragons, but I was a Lord of the Rings fan, Harry Potter fan. I've read the King Killer Chronicles, which is a great book series. I don't even know what that is. Yeah. I mean, I read some of the Game of Thrones books, not all of them because I'd already watched the show. Colin from 420, there's a video of protesters getting removed from the DNC Women's Caucus event in which a security guard says over and over, we understand, as the protesters speak of deaths and inhumane conditions. Truth is our leadership does understand and supports the genocide of Palestinians. Yes. Iowan Ryan, would Biden have picked Harris for VP if she hadn't convinced him she's pro-Israel enough? I don't think that was in consideration much.
I think he assumed she was.
I think he assumed she's a standard Democrat, and every Democrat is pro-Israel, as is every Republican.
Yeah, I don't think.
Except for the select few in the squad.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I think if you got up, if you climb to a certain level, like
of politics,
you're that's not the concern that they have. I don't think.
Like, I mean, she got elected in the biggest state in the country, right? Yeah. in California. You think she's not going to do AIPAC fundraisers in California? I've got a bridge to sell you. The 2 Democratic senators here in New York were both at the Netanyahu speech.
Yeah, and the thing is you kind of can
Another
leave
big blue state.
You can leave the discipline toward Israel policy to like AIPAC and the rest of the lobby. You don't really need to sign a blood oath when you're negotiating for VP. I don't think a lot of that stuff is on rails.
Dave from Jamaica, Kamala sucks. We just get a deal done is not going to work. Just cut aid. I mean, totally agree on that.
I actually do want to double back to that. We need to get a deal done. That's Trump, okay? Like, talking about deals.
Yes.
If we need to do deals, we'll just get Trump in there. And also, like, who is to blame if you don't?
They keep blaming. We need to get a deal
Hamas?
done. At least she didn't blame Hamas, right? That's what.
But that's the unspoken, like.
That's the unspoken thing. We know who's holding this up. We know. I mean, at least she didn't show up to his speech. But that's like, this is the point about what she can't keep doing is. That was a symbolic gesture. But if she keeps repeating this stuff, the anger that we're seeing here, which is righteous, right? Like we're seeing in people's response to that, that's going to keep simmering because no one cares about the symbolic stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't travel as well.
They're trying to find a sort of gesture that will sate the anti-genocide people, but also not offend the Zionists. And this is zero sum.
Yep.
This is completely zero sum. And then to the extent that you are acting like it's not, you are siding with the people who are killing tens and thousands of people and maiming others.
Let's do 22 here. This actually is fascinating.
I just have
sure.
to bombshell Becky. So Matt would rather have Trump than Harris because of Gaza. That's fucked up. I wonder how
now
you
we're
could
getting it from the
possibly
other
take from
side.
that. Like people need to like, I don't know, either take a vacation or lobotomize.
Well, I mean, we have friends at the show that are like leaving social media because they're getting bullied. Like I'm not gonna name names, but you know, it's not cool. It's just we've got to be a little bit more constructive here, and build a big tent so that we have the pressure mechanisms to end this genocide too. And also, and like accusing Matt of wanting Trump to win is not true. And it's this, and deploying that for uncommitted people is also extremely counterproductive.
Yeah, insane.
Let's do 22. I think this is fascinating. 22. This is the Jimmy Williams, the president of this union, talking about genocide. No, it's okay. Again, guys, I'll read some IMs as we get this. Okay. So, what's really encouraging to me about this moment in politics, I mean, there's a lot to be very discouraged about, but it's to see unions like the UAW pushing for an arms embargo on Israel. I think there were a few other unions that signed on to the letter shortly after Harris became the presumptive nominee when Biden dropped out.
Yeah, I need to find that full list, but it was several at least.
The SEIU was included, which is a union that Harris had been close to historically in California, and is important in Nevada, right? The unions in this country are doing great work, not just in terms of raising wages for workers and fighting corporate power, but also making clear that what they want to do with union power is broader than just fighting for those benefits and for wages and for fair contracts. It's also about using power to fight for what's right more broadly for working people and for people around the world.
It's a way to, express your democratic will. The reason these unions are saying this is because it's something the membership feels. And they want to use whatever power they have to express it. And the more power we have in unions and the more organized people are, the more this sort of thing. Because frankly, like in 1968, the union density was 25%. And now we're at about 10. So there's a lot more muscle that just wasn't flexed back then, but at least we're flexing it now and trying to build on that. Like this is actually how to put pressure on an administration, is things like this.
And you saying it's democracy is exactly right, because honestly, the Democrats have done a disservice by making democracy only about what you do on election day. This is a display of democracy as well. Workers coming together and building power so that they can use leverage on all the days that are not election day in November in for midterms and for the presidency.
As Richard Wolff says, democracy at work. Like if you can have democracy, but it only has the impact of every place except the place you spend 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Then what good is democracy?
Exactly. So with all that said, this is it's cut up, but because we couldn't really find the full speech, but you get the gist here. This is Jimmy Williams, the president of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, speaking very frankly about what's happening in Gaza.
There isn't another union in the building trades that hasn't called for a ceasefire like this union has, number one. Number two, we have called on the federal government to stop funding the genocide. I have personally been attacked for taking this position. In principle, I stand personally in support of calling for an end to the genocide that's going on right now in Palestine.
Let's go.
The investment world and the investment community is messy. We are working really, really hard at the International Pension Fund on coming up with a more responsible investment policy when it comes to our investments, which is your money, to make sure that we don't fund our self-destruction. This union does not support what is going on in Gaza. These things are messy.
So that
and I'm the
union
last person that should be talking about foreign policy. But I'm going to tell you this much. I don't want Donald Trump's hands on the nuclear weapons of this country, and we're not going to back down.
Incredible. Those were, I guess, some of the highlights as it related to the ceasefire. So the caption there says, our union is proud to have been one of the first unions to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, and our general president, along with our members, will continue to call on the federal government to stop funding the genocide. That's a promise. So these are the unions that will be pressure mechanisms for the Democrats, and they're using their power, as we said earlier, in broad ways, in a way that I think pretends for union power in this country moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an improvement. It's tough because unions are, again, in this tough position because they don't really have a lot of options either. Sean O'Brien can try to play both sides with the Republicans, and to a certain extent, I think he should be given some slack to, because I think there's a big problem with members thinking there's only one party, because there is. And how do you actually deal with that fact that's a pro-labor party? But this is like you said, this is the bright spot, and the more people get conscious about this as an avenue, then the more can actually impinge onto the power. And unfortunately, it's just a shame that we're not 10 years advanced on this front, because it could have really actually had some sway, probably on Biden even earlier, before he even dropped out, if that happened. But it's good to see it where it comes.
Yep. Protest, keep protesting, keep pushing, never stop. So I also wanted to play this here too, 21, Matt, while we're on talking about Israel-Palestine. Here is the UNRWA Commissioner General, Philippe Lazzarini. He went on Mehdi Hassan's show on Zeteo, and Mehdi speaks to him here about the dire situation and the genocide in Gaza, and this is what he had to say.
Last question, Philip Lazzarini. You haven't been able to enter Gaza this year, as you said. When you speak to your staff on the ground in Gaza, the ones who haven't been killed, both Palestinian and non-Palestinian, what do they tell you about what life is like right now for them in Gaza at UNRWA?